Vernomatic Productions.
Are you ready?
Live from the Metal Mayhem Studios in Rochester, New York.
We are gold.
And heard around the world by metalheads just like you. This is Metal Mayhem ROC.
Heavy metal music.
Your weekly dose of metal music, interviews, album reviews, news, and more. Want to be part of the show? Send us a message through our website, metalmayhemroc.com, or hit us up on Facebook and Twitter. Search Metal Mayhem ROC, a proud member of the Pantheon podcast team.
It's getting nice and heavy.
Now, welcome our hosts, John the Vernomatic Verno, and direct from New Jersey, Metal Walt.
Good evening, everybody. Hope everyone's doing well as we're into the first week in November. The leaves are falling all around. The holidays are right down the road. Football's in full force. And that is a great pivot into today's guest. We're welcomed by Keith Roth. Now, you may know Keith as the host of Sirius XM's Ozzy's Boneyard and Hair Nation. He's also the lead singer of the band The Dictators. Well, his brand new podcast with our buddy Don Jamieson launched in July, and it's called Rock Straps, right up here on Pantheon Music Podcast Group. It's a cool idea for a podcast. Now, what Keith and Don do is they invite people from the sports world on here to talk about music. It's a cool angle. So he's here to talk about how that 20-year idea became a reality for Don and Keith. He also shares what goes into the whole world of Sirius XM radio. Who picks the music? Why they pick the music? What input does Keith have in it? And his history with Sirius XM. He's been there over 20 years. So we cover a lot of ground with that topic. He shares stories about Rob Halford and Lemmy and other rock legends that we love. And then finally, we talk about the new Dictators album, how the band and Keith especially were trying to capture the spirit of New York punk, plans for an upcoming tour, and he opens up about his friendship with Joey Ramone. It's really cool. It's at one point at the time of the taping, the Yankees were going through the playoffs, so we make reference to the Yankee games. There's actually a Yankee game going on as we're taping it. So that's coming up in just a second. Just want to remind you to get up to our website and join our community. Now, what I mean by that is your first step is to sign up for the newsletter. This way you'll get updates on new episodes, exclusive interviews, live radio show reminders for the show I do on Monday nights. But also we got tons of CD reviews and concert reviews. Just this week, Metal Walt put up a couple, the David Gilmour review from Madison Square Garden, Iron Maiden this past weekend up in New Jersey. So again, that's metalmayhemroc.com. Sign up for the newsletter. While you're there, check out our merch page. We've got tons of stuff. Winter hoodies, winter hats, phone cases, T-shirts. It's all up there. And just to remind you, if you like what we're doing here, subscribe to the pod, leave a review up on Apple Podcasts, and we'll give you a shout out in future episodes. Speaking of past episodes, last week we had Chris Apolitari on talking about his brand new solo album, War Machine. A couple weeks before that, Walt and I live from New York at the Alex Van Halen book signing recap. We had Chris Herron on talking about his Hidden in Plain Sight solo album and tons of other cool content up there. So again, that's metalmayhemroc.com. So let's get into this. Let's get ready to talk rock, jocks, and Sirius Satellite Radio with Keith Roth. I'm the Vernomatic, and this is Metal Mayhem ROC. So let's just get right into it. From Sirius Satellite Radio, The Dictators in his brand new podcast, Rock Straps, a fellow Pantheon music group sibling as Metal Mayhem's up on Pantheon, Keith Roth. Keith, welcome to the show. How are you, man?
Let me tell you, it's an honor to be hanging with John and Walt right here. It's great to have. I'm glad we're able to finally work this out, and it's good to see you guys.
Welcome to Pantheon. Been listening to Rock Straps, the podcast. We're good friends with Don Jamieson. Walt and Don are Jersey kin, just like you and Walt. And we've had him on the show. I've seen him live, the big comedy scene up here in Rochester. So quickly, how did Rock Straps come about? Did the Pantheon people pursue you? You don't need any more work to do. How'd that come about?
I mean, it was an idea that I had about 22 years ago. And there was even some pilots cut. And initially, my co-host was Dave the Snake Szabo from Skid Row. And we had a guy named Jimmy Steele working with us. We had Blackjack McDowell, former pitcher for the Yankees. And it really never got off the ground. And we did we did a couple pilots for it, but it never materialized. And then, one day I was talking to Don, probably about 2015 on the Monsters of Rock cruise, and we're talking about sports and we're talking about rock. And all of a sudden, like the light bulb went off in my head, and I told Don the idea and he loved it. And we've had a few false starts. Some, people have, we've worked towards getting it out there, but it never really materialized until we met the guys from Pantheon, Peter and Christian. And that's when we decided, let's give this a go. And now it's underway. I think we just finished our 15th episode. I think 12 are up there. So it's cool.
First of all, a great name, Rock Straps. Are you kidding me? I've been listening to it. Today I'm at the gym and I listened to the Michael Sweet one. That was a good one. I love the Kyle Turley one.
Yeah, so, it was fun.
Great content. And I like it. It's easily consumable. 30, 40 minutes, that's what we subscribe to here. Get in, bang it, get out. So great job. Great job.
I appreciate that, John. Well, the fact also that me and Don both have severe ADHD, anything more than 30 minutes is going to be, it's going to be a battle at that point. But yeah. I mean, we had Blackie Lawless on the show. We got the Dandy Warhols coming up. We got Danny Saber, who produced the Rolling Stones. There's some other really big names, like big names that we can't, that we're hoping to confirm in the next couple of weeks, but we got big plans for it. We're just getting started, and I'm glad you appreciate it. So that means a lot to us.
One quick question before we move it along here. Who does the production? Do you do your own booking? How much involvement do you have? Do you have a team? How do you put this together?
Very little team. It's me, Don, and we have a producer named Tom. And we had another guy that worked with us, kind of started with us, and he's still part of the family, named Lou. And, we record it, and we hand it off to those guys, and they send it off to Pantheon and our producers, or, the friendships that me and Don, that we've known for so many years. I'll book a guest, he'll book a guest, Tom will bring in a guest, Lou will bring in a guest. So as of right now, we're kind of just booking the gigs, the guests through people we know.
Keith, what were some of the highlights so far? Like, I'm a big hockey guy. I thought having Jeremy Roenick on was kind of cool. Like, what do the athletes offer? Are they like, or do you seek out athletes that you're like, these guys are rock heads or metal heads? Like, how do you go find the rock guys or the athletes that rock?
Well, I mean, it started really, the idea of the rock strap, as I mentioned, we did some dates with Jack McDowell, Jack, the pitcher, Blackjack McDowell, won a Cy Young.
Oh, yeah.
But he's in a band called Stick Figure, and we did some shows with him, and it had Mike Maceras from the Smithereens, and we were talking rock and roll and sports, and a lot of these, Mike Piazza is another big rock guy. I talk to a lot of friends that are pro sports guys that love music, and so sports guys that if they're into music, they love talking music amongst each other, whatever, who's on a team, they'll have guy like Joe Girardi loves Led Zeppelin and the Stones. And he had other guys on the team that he like talking the Stones and Zeppelin with, et cetera, et cetera. So, and as Jeremy Roenick said it the best, he goes, rock guys want to be sports guys and sports guys want to be musicians. And I think you can't say 100%, but I think it's a big percentage that feel that way. A lot of sports guys are hardcore music fans. They're at the record store day. They're asking about new records or texting, hey, what's going on with this, blah, blah, blah. So there's a big passion there. I mean, listen, if I wasn't 5'9", I would love to be playing for the New York Knicks. I mean, that'd be my fantasy, but that's not the case.
And Keith, I was thinking about some future guests for you, and I have a couple names I'm going to throw it out to you. I was thinking, first of all, how about Randy Johnson? The guy was like big into like drums. He's tight with Rush. I remember like professional photographer, shooting concerts. I mean, how about him? Would he be great to get on?
It's so funny you said that because we're trying to work that out with him. So that is one of the high people that are on the list. Remember when I said there's some stuff going around? He's one of the stuff going around. Randy Johnson, but that's a great idea. Yeah.
All right. So I I got two more. And I think one, maybe it's a little bit of a dream, but Maiden's coming through. They'll be they'll be coming in this area soon, and they're big soccer guys, right? They do soccer matches with the local community and that thing. Wouldn't it be great to get Steve Harris on to talk football and soccer? Nothing Maiden. How great would that be?
That would be really damn cool. I mean, and Nico's a Florida guy, and I believe he's a Panthers fan, and I believe he's a Marlins fan, and I believe he's a Jaguars fan. So he's another good guy. But yeah, I would love to. If you know Steve, tell him to come on the Rock Strap. You're friends with Keith and Don. Bring him on. Steve Harris has an unlimited, spot on our show, no doubt about it. That is a great idea.
And I got one more for you. And this one might be more in a reach, but I always remember growing up as a kid in the early 80s watching MTV. I'm 54. And when those Triumph videos came on, those live ones, Mike always had a hockey jersey on every live show he was at in a different arena. He would always wear the local hockey jersey. How great would it be to get him on to say, hey, take us through your closet. What's your collection of NHL jerseys like?
I mean, I think you guys should be doing the Rock Strap, actually. Because, having Mike Levine on the show, right? Well, yeah. we almost had another band from Ontario that's also a three-piece, is another guy that we're strongly working on to have on the show as well, who's a huge baseball fan. So I'll leave it at that. But I would love to have Mike Levine, and I've talked to Mike. He's a great guy, and I'd love to talk hockey with him. So 3 brilliant ideas, Walt.
You got it, man. We're all part of the Pantheon family, man. We throw your ideas to you, and if you can make it happen, even better.
That's it. We're one big dysfunctional family.
I have a suggestion. A couple of years ago, my son, he's a big Green Bay Packer fan. So Clay Matthews was up here for one of those sports banquets, and I bought the package where you could meet him. And so we met him, and Clay's a big metal guy. So I said, hey, Claymaker. That was his nickname at the time. I go, I hear you're into metal. He goes, yeah, I'm into metal. What do you know about metal? Because I was all suited up. And
so we talked. You are Mr. Metal Mayhem?
Yeah, I had to give him the rundown. So we had the possibilities are endless. It
is. I mean, Kyle Turley, if you heard, he's a big Slayer guy, a big punk rock guy. Jeremy Roenick loves the Stones. He loves Motley Crue. But these are all, listen, any of these guys you talk to, ask them, you have an avenue, say, listen, we'll put you on the Rock Strap. You got to do Metal Mayhem, but then, we'll get you on the Rock Strap too, or vice versa. However, we can help you guys too.
That's a great idea. So, Keith, how often are these being dropped? Weekly, every couple of weeks?
Every Thursday, 3 a.m. Eastern time, midnight Pacific we drop new. We haven't missed a beat since we started in July. And, we plan on doing it every week, even if Don's on the road or I'm on the road, we'll get together, we'll make time, and we'll try to coordinate 4 or 5 shows. I mean, they are pre-recorded. We'd love to get to the point where we can do them live. I mean, there's stuff airing now that was recorded in September when I predicted the Mets and Yankees in the World Series, and everybody thought I was insane, but I did that on September, I think 10th, and they were laughing at me, and it's not so funny anymore. So, but yeah, we do it weekly, 3 a.m. Eastern time is when the new episodes drop. And we got Danny Saber dropping this week, and Danny's worked with David Bowie and the Stones and Alice Cooper, Michael Hutchins from INXS. He did his final recordings, and he's a big Jets fan, and he's originally a New York guy. So, it's a pretty cool interview.
Metal Mayhem ROC.
Let's talk a little bit about Sirius Satellite Radio, and then we'll get over to your new passion, the Dictators. Sirius, been listening to you for years, man. Congratulations. I think 22 years on the platform.
Yep.
Where do I start? We got tons of questions. Is that pre-recorded? Do you do it from your house? Do you have to go to New York? Do you have any input on the songs?
Well, I mean, when I first got hired at Sirius, it was 2002, I think. And I didn't know, can I curse on the show or no?
Oh, fuck yeah.
Okay. I didn't know what the fuck satellite radio was. I had no fucking clue. But I was doing a show called Electric Ballroom on FM radio in Jersey on the Rat 95.9. And I got approached about doing a punk rock show. So I was like, all right, this sounds cool, but what is satellite radio? And they're like, well, and then you could come up and maybe do a weekend on this channel called First Wave. It was very confusing. I thought initially I was seeing Wayne's World in my head, like, two guys in their basement with like some satellites or some shit. And then when it was in Midtown, and it was worth it to come in for the interview, because I'll be honest, the money was pretty cool to come in one day a week to do a punk show. And when I got off the elevator, I felt like I landed on the Starship Enterprise. I mean, it was unbelievable to see this and seeing people like Pat St. John and Carol Miller and Meg Griffin and and this was pre-Howard. I mean, it was only like 40,000 subscribers. So I was floored. And I'm like, I better educate myself on this pretty quickly. And I started doing a punk rock show there called the Boneyard. And believe it or not, I was on First Wave and Left of Center, which was an alternative thing. And then things kind of switched up a little bit. And then I was on a channel called Buzzsaw, which was pre-Ozzy's Boneyard. Basically, when they merged, a lot of it came like 50-50 of some of the channels. So, so some of the, like I work with David Johansen up there. I've been producing his show for since 2003, 2004, and we have 1,000% input on his show. When I was doing the Boneyard, 1,000%. But shows like Ozzy's Boneyard, there's a group of songs that we have, and that's what we pick from. And we've really opened it up a lot lately. I don't know if you've been listening, but playing stuff like Fire Down Under from Riot and going deeper into the Van Halen and stuff from Priest, Sin After Sin. I read the emails. People call me every name in the book. Don't you know any more than this? And I'm like, I'm with you. I get it. But, there's big tests and big money spent on all this crap to see, but it's really opened up a lot more.
Sure.
And to answer your question about before the pandemic, I was going into the city a lot, but I was also had the abilities to record from home. So since the pandemic, it's been a lot more looser. If I'm in New York City, I'll go up there and do stuff. Or if I'm home, it's very cool that we have the leisure of doing that.
When you do it from home, do they set you up with a makeshift studio or?
Like I said, I've been doing some shows from home to going way back to, like 2013, 2012. So when the pandemic happened, I mean, I was training a lot of people because they were getting out, like makeshift kind of stuff and microphones, and they were amazing how quick they turned. We didn't miss a beat through all of that. So, it's pretty elaborate.
Mm-hmm. So Keith, when you say like there's a block of songs, like there's a list, like a playlist, right? So you get your 2 or 3 hour slot. Are you now at the liberty to say, you know what, I have to take a block, but I can choose and pick and choose from this block, and then I'll throw in 2 songs of my own choice for an hour, and one of them is going to be a deep track? Like, how does the whole decision-making process go into it?
Well, that's where you have program directors. So, we try to make, listen, there's stuff that we add in and, people request stuff, and whatever I can, and especially I love when people request deep stuff, because that's really where my head's at, and that's why we have that thing, The Ultimate Sinner and Ozzy's Boneyard. But as far as us, obviously we have input of what songs we should be in there. But if you listen to guys like me and Tommy and whoever else is on there, you'd hear like the Prophet song from Queen, or you'd hear, Diamonds and Rust. I mean, it's a real, there's a lot of thought that goes into it. But, I don't personally pick the tunes that are in Ozzy's Boneyard, but I do have an input. And it depending on the circumstance. If I'm doing an interview, that's my interview, and we pick songs around the interview and we go deep and whatnot. But these things are done, people get paid a lot of money to figure out that kind of stuff.
Are your breaks batched up? Do you go in and do production for 4 hours and whip off 15 breaks? Or do you sit in the studio for 4 hours and do your shift?
I really can't comment on that, but you could.
Okay.
The illusion is I'm there 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. I'm on the air right now, man.
Like you're running down the hallway, going from Octane to, Hair Nation.
But
in the back,
a lot of stuff is a lot more live than you think. I mean, we may be a few minutes behind the curb in certain areas, or maybe a few hours behind the curb, and maybe some weekend stuff and things like that. But, sadly, when something, like when Eddie Van Halen passed away, that was insane. I had the honors of hosting that whole tribute to him. Things happen. And, And breaking news with Jakey Lee getting shot today. You heard about that, right? I'm sure you know.
Yep.
So I mean, we get the information out, and and if people choose to do it live, they have that choice too. They could sit there and do what they have to do.
Right behind me, you can see this this poster. I host a live radio show on Monday nights, part of the Metal Mayhem ROC brand.
Well, you have a good radio voice.
Well, thank you. And, we all have the passion, Keith. We all have our stories. I was doing a little show research and watching a couple of your interviews, and you were talking about your first show. You went and saw Zeppelin, and, you have 77. I started seeing shows in 1980. I had older brothers that was getting me into stuff. So we all have the same passion. So,
I was 10 years old. I fell asleep during that Led Zeppelin show. I had just played baseball, and, I went to the Garden, because I'd been there for the circus, but I've never been there for the Garden and seeing all these beautiful, scantily clad women. And keep in mind, I'm going on 10. And, all the marijuana, man, all the reefer that was being, so, a whole day of playing baseball, and I owned Zeppelin 4 at that point. But when they started going into the unplugged part, I was snoring. And then I woke up, halfway through it. But yes, we all relate to that. And, music's been in our DNA, and fans of music, as far back as I could remember. Literally 3 or 4 years old. I could remember. My memories are always music related, hearing that Cream single of, Sunshine, was a White Room, and the B-side was Swabber, and hearing bands like the MC5 and the Stooges, because we grew up in the Bronx, and that was hip. When I moved out to New Jersey, when I said, "Are you into the Stooges?" They're like, "Who? Larry Moe and Curly?" I'm like, "No, it's fucking Iggy Pop and Ron Ashton." It took Jersey was a little bit behind at that point, but as you say, John, 1980, that was a glorious year, Black and Blue. I think, Heaven and Hell, these are the things that go through my head, when I hear years. It's always based around music or even sports.
Totally, dude, totally. I can't remember what I did 2 days ago, but I could remember, the Yankees 78 lineup and, what games they won against Kansas City and that,
Chris Chambliss, Willie Randolph, Bucky Dent, Greg Nettles, right? Thurman Munson. I'm right. Yep. We know.
Yeah.
Have you guys seen this guy on Instagram called the batting stance guy?
No.
Oh, look him up. He's batting stance guy. He's great because he'll take those teams from the 70s and he replicates every single guy in the lineup. And he goes through the lineup and does like a 2-minute clip. And he like dead ringer for the swing of every guy we grew up in his childhood. Pick it. You'll see the 78 Yankees, 84 Tigers. Unbelievable.
Well, I'm writing this down. What's that called?
He's a batting stance guy.
All
Just
right.
look him up.
Batting stance
But
guy.
Keith, while you're writing that down, one more question about the programming. And I noticed this. I had Roger Earl of Foghat on the show last week we were talking about Sonic Mojo, and it reminded me of recently. Again, you were doing a little plug for Sonic Mojo. You said something like Roger Earl's still out there kicking ass. Check out Sonic Mojo. But here we go, and here's Fool for the City for you. So when it comes to like new music, again, it's not knocking Sirius XM, but I feel like it's it would be better if we could get some new of the Priest tracks or some of these other bands. You don't really hear them a lot, and that's a shame because I think that's the form where guys like us are, of course, going to go out there and buy the music, but you got to slide those in addition to the deep tracks.
And it shows you the fan base of Foghat. That record has been in the top 10 for 20 weeks or whatever. And,
31 weeks.
21 weeks, right? And Roger's a great guy. If you see Roger, give him my love. And his wife Linda. Have you met Linda?
Yes, I did. Yes, met him in the city at the Bitter End not too long ago.
The last time I saw them, they came down and paid me a visit, and they gave me 2 bottles of the Foghat wine. And good thing we had Uber at that point. But what a great guy. And Roger's got to be into his 70s now, and like I say, he's out there, kicking ass and taking names. The drummer in my band, Albert Bouchard, Blue Oyster Cult, we had to hold up a tour for a day because the guy ran the marathon. But as far as new music, I'm right there with you, man. The fans, I always, my big argument when we used to go to see shows, I used to go to the Palladium in New York City, right? It didn't matter what fucking song the band played. The crowd knew every song. There was no hits. You go see Judas Priest on the Point Entry tour, and everybody knew the Ripper and Starbreaker. it wasn't hits, it was the band. They knew the record. There was no deep tracks. The Scorpions, In Trance. I mean, the crowd, the fans is what brought this band through the mainstream. So, I mean, do I ever want to hear You Got Another Thing Coming Again? No. Do I want to hear Back in Black? No. If I'm on the air, do I shut it off? I mean, I love the bands and I have nothing but love and respect for all of them. But I get where the people are coming from. But the masses do want to hear those songs.
And that's the thing. It's like we've had this debate many times. We talked about it with Jamieson. We're the rarity. 8 out of 10 people, they're the soccer moms and the lacrosse dads. They want to hear those songs. Right. So as soon as you start doing a deep cut, if Sirius did a deep cut that Walt, you and I would get into, and Keith, 7, 8 people will turn it off. They'll go somewhere else. They're like, what's this?
See, but that's the beauty of, and I'm not shilling, I'm not a corporate guy, but I do love the company. I do love the people that run it.
Yeah.
Fortunately, there's so many channels there that if you're hearing Fool for the City, you just make a turn, you're on Liquid Metal, you're hearing Saxon or whatever the case may be. I mean, that is the beauty of it. I mean, and then there are, and the app is so fucking awesome because there's so many places to hear hearing Roger Earl talking about Sonic Mojo and playing new tunes off of it. So if that's what you want to, I know on Hair Nation they have a show called Hair to Stay where they're playing the new songs from some of the new artists. So I mean, they're trying to create this happy medium, and most people that are in the beautiful thing about Sirius too is a lot of them are music guys, because a lot of the big guys I fight with, I'm like, and they fight back and they get it and they understand. A lot of them, you'd be surprised, are exactly like we are. They get it.
Before I send it over to Walt, and he's going to take a deep dive into the Dictators, I do have a couple more comments about Sirius. Years ago, when I used to have the in-dash little mounting unit, it gave you the option to program up to 30 bands. So whenever that band was on any channel through Sirius, it would beep. And I have 3 sons, and they're in their mid-20s, early 30s now. But 15, 18 years ago, we played a game. You would hear the beep as I'm bringing them to school, and we would all be like, oh, I wonder what it is. And then it's like a 2-3 second delay. And then it'll be like, oh, Rush is on. But Rush would be on some channel like there used to be a Canadian channel called Iceberg. And I don't know if they still, have it.
Listen, I love Canada and I love the music that comes out of Canada because I love bands like Rush and I love bands like Sloan. And that's a beautiful thing about Canada is they, it just seems like they're more open to everything. It's not as much segregated as far as like if you like Rush, you like Triumph, you could like a big diversity and stuff. But sure. I wish what was that name of that channel again?
Iceberg.
All right, I'm going to look in to see if there's Iceberg, and if there is, I want to check it out.
It was all Canadian stuff, but like they would play Rush, but they would play stuff like something off Caress of Steel, or they would do something deep because Canada could do that because Canada, they don't. They're totally cool. But there would be any band on any of the channels. You could hear Priest on Classic Cut and you would hear something different.
Right.
But now, you don't have the in-dash, or if you do, it doesn't have that anymore.
Well, I mean, we're a record buying public too, right? So, we all own Caress of Steel and we own that, I mean, you'd be shocked at the stuff that I listen to when I'm not on the air. I mean, Miles Davis, Bitches Brew, I was really excited about the reissue of the Wilco record, Foxtrot. Oh my God, my favorite Wilco. So I'm getting to I'm getting into my later 30s now, so I start forgetting things. But
well, I just turned 40, so once you get there, the eyes go. So.
At least we're also comedians too.
Yeah.
We're all got to be stupid on the air. The immaturity never goes away. So, hey, Keith, I also make homemade wine. So when I get a chance to meet you in person, I'm going to drop you a couple of bottles of the homemade Franco wine. And you match it up to the Fog Hat wine.
All right, I'll do that. I will consume it. Man. You've got my word on that, Walt, for sure.
Okay. Hey, last thing on XM, I'm always curious because, I think what sets you apart from the rest, and a lot of the other DJs are great. I'm not knocking them by any means, but when you get on the air, you have a lot of clever lines and you share stories about your experiences, meeting the guys, seeing the shows. I mean, what's it like being, let's say, before the pandemic, you might have been in the room with Ozzy or Steven Tyler or Paul Stanley or Rob Halford. Like, just take us through like an experience like that when you're prepping for a 5-minute interview.
Any of those guys you mentioned, I really wouldn't prep unless there's a new record. I'd want to give them the respect of talking about the new record, because as a musician, a lot of time goes into a record, every bell and whistle. There's a lot of effort that goes into it. Look, I started doing this. I'm a musician. I've been playing music as far back as I could remember. So, I think, and a lot of those guys know me from playing music. And I'll tell you, every one of those guys that you just mentioned, they're all great guys. I mean, they get a little stressed out because they have such hardcore fans. But if you were in a room, if the three of us were in a room with Paul Stanley, I guarantee you'd walk out of that room and say, he's the greatest fucking guy I've ever met in my life. The same thing can be said about Rob Halford. A funny story about Rob Halford is we did this really, really cool interview, and it never aired because for some reason we talked about the Clash. We talked about this cool stuff. And he went downstairs and said goodbye to him. I went down like an hour later. He's still waiting there. I go, what's the matter, Rob? He's like, this is what happens when you run your own record label. They didn't send car service. He's waiting out there for like some cab that he had called into. But like Rob Halford, Steven Tyler. Who else did you mention?
Paul Stanley. I mean, you name it. Lemmy. How about Lemmy?
Yeah. The first time I met Lemmy, I played pinball with him. I was a young kid. I had a lot of energy, and I really loved rock and roll, and always wanted to be around these guys because that's, that was the closest thing to doing what they're doing. But, we snuck into a Motorhead show. I'll tell you the quick story is Motorhead was playing on Another Perfect Day tour. You remember that tour? It was when they had Brian Robertson from Thin Lizzy in the band. It was one record. And we live in Edison, New Jersey. This was in North Brunswick. So,
1983.
Jersey, it's pretty close. I'm like, Motorhead's playing up the street. Me and my buddy Mark drove up there, and we had no intention of getting in. We were way underage, but we figured we could maybe meet Lemmy, hear the band through the walls, and maybe even get in to buy a T-shirt, right? And when we get there, the band Helix is the opening band, and they're loading stuff in, and they're having a lot of trouble. So they asked us to help them out. We carried in their SVTs and their drum kits. And they said, all right, we'll get you into the show. And now we're underage, but we could care less. And it's funny because when Helix was playing, people were throwing batteries at them, like throwing beer bottles. And the singer was a badass, an Ontario band. He jumped in the crowd, got in people's faces. He won the crowd over. But anyway, and then Motorhead went on amazing with Brian Robertson. He wasn't Fast Eddie Clark, but it was a cool, unique thing. And after the show, I see Lemmy at the Royal Manor. They had a pinball machine. People were walking out. He could give a fuck. He's playing pinball after the show, hanging out with the people, because that's what Lemmy was all about. He'd be on stage and he'd be out in the crowd. He was just part of the spectacle, right? And I walked up to him and I said, hey, Lemmy, I've been a fan. I was in a Hawkwind when I was a kid and loved Hawkwind. I love Motorhead and saw you with Ozzy. And he just said, grab a flipper. And I was, I had a flipper. He had a flipper. And he signed my Motorhead shirt that I bought that night. And I met him several times after that, but you never forget the first time. And he's always been awesome, always awesome. So, most of these guys, if you meet them in a great situation, and there's no idiots around like that are losing their shit over it. And like, just people that are fans and I've got great questions. Every one of those guys you mentioned are all great guys. Steven Tyler, Rob Halford, Paul Stanley, Gene Simmons, even. I love busting his balls. Love busting his chops because, he thinks he knows everything. And he's really one of those guys that if you in a family picnic, you have the crazy uncle that always just talks and talks. Gene Simmons is that guy. It's like you kind of pay him a little bit of mind, you get a kick out of him, but you don't really take him that seriously. But he's got a really big heart and he's a good dude.
I have a Motorhead story. It was 1983, Another Perfect Day tour.
Right.
I ride my bike up to the House of Guitars. I'm 14 years old. And it just so happened Motorhead was in town that night, and they're doing a in-store at the House of Guitars.
Oh, wow.
So I was up there to buy Aerosmith's Rockin' a Hard Place.
I love that album. Yep.
On cassette, because I'm riding my bike, and I have my boombox on me on the strap. And so I go there. There's Lemmy. There's the band. I go up there. I get an autograph, and there's Lemmy. He's smoking a Marby down to the filter. He's like, "You going to the show tonight?" I'm like, no, I wish I could. I'm like 12. He's like, so he signed it, and then I have it somewhere in the vaults. the cigarette pack. It was the end of the cigarette pack, and he signed that too and gave it to me. So yeah. So I had that mole right in front of me, right there.
Yeah. What a good dude, man, and what a legacy. They'll be talking about Lemmy in 1,000 years from now.
You know, before we get into the Dictators, I was watching a video today of the band playing with Carmen Appice or Appice, whatever, which way you say it. You're doing the cover of Zeppelin's Misty Mountain Hop.
Okay.
And that wasn't at the outdoor stage at the House of Guitars, was it?
It was, I was playing.
Yeah, you were playing. You had the drummer of King's X. He had finished.
Jerry Gaskill.
You had the two girls. And you did a cover of Zeppelin's Misty Mountain Hop.
And Bumblefoot.
Yes, in Bumblefoot with the double neck.
Yeah, I do remember that. Okay.
Well, I'm looking at it, and because at the House of Guitars, they have an outdoor little stage that people play, and it looks just like that.
No, you know what that was? That was, Mark Weiss, the photographer?
Yeah.
Mark Weiss had a gallery at a theater in Middletown, New Jersey, and he we were Mark used us as his backing band, and Mark's got ideas. And so that was really the first show where where people really got to see each other after COVID. It was like people came out and Mark opened, had the gallery of his prints, and, Bumblefoot was there, and Don and Jim, I think Eddie was there too. But no, it wasn't Rochester. It was Middletown, the theater in Middletown, New Jersey.
Cool.
I have a lot of family in Middletown. Where was I that night?
Yeah, that was
Where
a
was
good
I
show.
that night?
Actually, the Dictators' first show was for the Metal Hall of Fame that was recorded at the same theater, and it was we played unplugged. Eddie Trunk, I don't know if he got inducted or he was hosting. Twisted Sister guys were there. Was Mark there? Because Mark was part of the Dictators, Mendoza. He played on the Manifest. He did the Kiss tour. He might have been there too, but that was a cool theater, and that was the last time I've been there. Those two shows.
The heavy metal rock and roll Hall of Fame, John knows this, is the Winnebago that they had. It was parked in the Parsippany ShopRite during the whole 2-year pandemic, which is 5 minutes from my house. So every day I would drive by there and I would say, I don't know why this is here in the parking lot. It's just sat there for 2 years and then it just went away.
When you say Parsippany, right? I think of a great story. When you're kids, you hear stuff on the radio, right? So John Lennon, this is 1975, right? John Lennon's on WNEW, and I forgot who he was talking to, and he was a little hungover or whatever, and they said, well, where were you last night? He goes, oh, man, I went to go see T-Rex last night, and it was amazing. And they go, oh, where'd you see him at? He goes, oh, this place in Jersey called Parsippany.
Parsippany.
So anytime anybody says Parsippany, I always think of John Lennon calling it Parsippany. But it's funny that the metal, I've seen that guy, Pat, right? He runs
Pat Casaldo.
But yeah, what a great guy. Yeah, I mean, you're right.
If you see him again, ask him, where did it go? But there was a fan there that took a picture in the empty parking lot when nobody was out during pandemic. That guy was me. So I'm down in history there. And it was probably Scott Muni, I'm thinking, Keith. It was probably Scott. So, John, where did you play last night?
Well, you said you have a place in Point, right? So Scott lived in Point. Scott used you just get the driver driving him into WNEW, and what a legend, man, Scott Muni. I mean, I mean, as far as radio, playing music is what got me into radio, because I was in a band back in the early 90s called Bad Biscuit, right? And we did, we played with the Ramones. We even toured, we did some shows with Bon Jovi. We were on MTV, blah, 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 right? And this girl comes out and does, like a little press junket with us. And her name is Amy Christie. And she was Charlie Watts and Ronnie Wood's publicist. She was very cool. And then she moves down to Jersey, where we were all living in Long Branch at that point. And she said, there's a new radio station that's opened in Belmar, the Rat. And they've been there a million years. I did the Electric Ballroom up until July of 2023. 25 years of that show. Everybody did that show. But anyway, so she's like, do you want to do a radio? And I'm like, well, I'm not really in a front and back selling like corn and stuff like that. People always say you should do radio. No, we could do our own show. And, that couldn't happen nowadays. But back then it was still, when I first started working there was carts. Like they'd have to transfer music onto carts. But we started doing that show. We had from her, people that she knew from doing PR and people that I knew from playing in bands. We had like John Paul Jones and the Ramones would come down, and it was an amazing time. But that's how I got into doing radio. But so from doing that show is what led me to Sirius XM. I told you I have ADHD, so things, I know you asked me earlier, so things may just pop out of nowhere out of my.
We had that question on our list, is how you got in radio. It just was at the top, so you answered it towards the end.
I also have a bit of clairvoyancy. So, that's how I got, and I did a show that I loved doing for 25 years, but it just got to the point where the only two people we never had on the show, we made a huge list of all the people we wanted on our show, everybody. And we got every single person as a guest on that list, except for David Bowie, which ain't going to happen. And I surrendered about Keith Richards, but we did have members of the Stones on there. So when we filled out the list and it got to the point where, the bands and Sirius and all this other stuff, and doing that 2-hour show took me it was 14-hour, once a week commitment. And I just didn't have the time anymore. And I felt like, let me close it out. And I think the last guest I had was the Dictators to announce, a tour we were doing with the Damned, and I had Dennis Dunaway the week before, and I was like, and these guys have all been repeat, guests on the show. Just felt like it was time to close the chapter on it.
Yeah. One last quick question: we're going to be in New York Monday for the Alex Van Halen signing. I'm driving down from Rochester, and we're going. You going to be there?
I didn't even know about the Alex Van Halen signing, so tell me about it.
Barnes and Noble.
Barnes and Noble on 5th Avenue and 44th or something like that. Noon, this Monday. Book signing.
Any signing brothers?
Yeah. They announced tickets for the hell of it. I went online and I was able to buy 2 tickets, $35 a piece. So
that's amazing. So what for $35 you get the book and he signs it, right?
You get a book. You get the book. I already have the pre-order for the audio, but you get a book. It's signed. And a picture with them.
That's great.
Are you kidding me? $35. So
I have if you want to mention something fun at Alex Van Halen, the only time I ever really talked to him is when they were doing the Monsters of Rock. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And it was the gig they did in Philadelphia. So I had met him a couple times before briefly, but we were in the lobby of the Four Seasons Hotel in Philly. And he was there, they're ready to go to the venue. This is before they left for the venue. And we're talking, and I walked up and I said, "Hey, Alex, I want to just started shooting the shit with him." And he goes, "When I have time, I like to talk to people. It's really rare." He almost apologized as soon as I walked up. And so we're talking. And as we're talking, this guy comes up. And I know he'll never forget this if you mention it to him. And he goes, "Can I ask a favor of you?" And Alex looked like, "All right, I'm getting out of here." And he goes, "Would you mind taking a picture?" And Alex was ready to either do it. And what happened was he was at a wedding party, didn't know who the fuck Alex Van Halen was, but wanted Alex to take a picture of this guy with his girlfriend. It had nothing to do with fandom. It was at the and he laughed for you heard him laughing as he went to go to the gig. But Alex, I had the honors of meeting Eddie a couple times too, which was great guy. That was my only Alex Van Halen moment. I did get a photo with him that night, and he was super cool. But I'm going to try to go Monday.
Yeah, we only got a few minutes left. We're respectful of your time. Walt's dissected this album. Walt, get into it, man, because you got a lot of nice notes on this album.
So, Keith, we're talking about the Dictators, your new self-titled album. It's fucking awesome. And it's, you know what? The cool thing is we're talking a lot about this whole New York City street vibe, the punk rock, just garage rock. And this is what that album is. But maybe quickly take us, how long have you been in the band? I know you've done some touring with them. And, how did you end up getting the job to be the lead singer and then end up writing songs to make this album? Quickly take us through that.
I mean, it's funny because and Andy Chernoff, who started the Dictators, thinks I'm full of shit. But the first record I bought with my own money was "Go Girl Crazy," their debut record. I mean, the ironic thing is that Handsome Dick Manitoba and the late great Scott Kempner went to kindergarten with my brother. So this is a band that I've known as far back as I can remember because we all grew up in the Bronx. near 80 projects. I even went to PS41. They all went to PS41. And so I knew of these guys, and they had a record deal. And if you guys remember Alexander's department store.
Yeah. Route
right?
17, man, in Paramus.
Well, there was one on Fordham Road in the Bronx, and I used to love their record department. And now I had records before. My brother would give me his hand-me-downs because he was a fanatic. If there was a little scratch on it, he had to replace it. So, but when I saw that album cover with Richard on the cover with the wrestling outfit on, and, I bought it. So, and then I got to know those guys throughout the years. And I actually had filled in one time about 2018 playing bass because they were playing, it was right around New Year's, to play the Go Girl Crazy, that record I just mentioned, in its entirety. But I played in a band for Frankenstein 3000 for 25 years, and we did several shows with a version of the Dictators without Andy, who is, he is like, he's one of the main dudes. He's, started. So, and Albert Bouchard from Blue Oyster Cult, Don't Fear the Reaper. When he got into the band, when Andy decided to get the band back together, he got him and Ross the Boss. And then they got Albert, and they were doing it as a three-piece. And they said, at that point, Scott Kempner's dementia started getting really bad. And they knew that they couldn't work with him any longer. He's not mentally able to play anymore. He couldn't remember stuff, which is horrible because Scott was such a wonderful guy. And they said, we need a guitar player and we need a singer. And Albert's like, Keith Roth would be maybe someone we should consider. And Ross is like, and he knew me, Ross knows me as a musician. So he's like, that's not a bad idea. And Andy's like, the DJ, But anyway, I went down and I auditioned, and I knew the first album. And, I met Andy several times, and it just gelled. And then we started playing, and, I got the audition, and I've been a fan of the band, like I said, as far back as I could remember, like under 10. And then we've done 4 tours already. We've been out with the Dam twice. We did a Canadian run. We did a pretty big tour of Spain last year. And, the band as a live band is really good. And and Andy was always a songwriter, but, he was up to having me and Albert write and Ross. So we made a hell of a record. I'm fucking proud of that album. I think it's great. And,
it is great, Keith. It is great. I mean, you think of like some of the tracks, like my favorites, and we'll just go through them quickly, but the lead single, Thank You and Have a Nice Day. I mean, a lot of tongue-in-cheek lyrics on that one. And then, of course, Sweet Joey, all about Joey Ramone. And it's funny, my sons play roller hockey, and on Saturdays, sometimes we have gaps in between games, and it's in Lyndhurst, New Jersey. And I knew we were going to be speaking to you last weekend. So I took a ride down to the cemetery because he's buried there, but I couldn't, of course, I couldn't find the headstone, but the spirit was there, Yeah. But, I mean, talk about some of the songs on the album. I mean, just good stuff on it.
Well, we all knew Joey well, and we all loved Joey. I mean, real quick about Joey is when my first kid, my daughter, when Madison, she was born, my wife was bartending, and Joey used to call me, right? Now, you talk about music fans, right? Joey was the biggest music fan ever. And I would see that Jeff Hyman, his real name on the caller ID, and we would talk about Cheap Trick, and we would talk about Motorhead. And one of the biggest music fans, and I loved him and I miss him dearly. But Andy and the Dictators and the Ramones had such a strong connection. Actually, the Dictators actually predate the Ramones. As far as, and there's been big arguments and who was the first punk rock band, and they did California Sun before it. So that was Andy's homage to his buddy Joey. And Andy played bass on on Joey's last record, Don't Worry About Me. So the connection between all of us, but especially Andy and Joey. And that's how Sweet Joey came about.
And it's just the video is great too, because you pull all those old images of him, the B-roll footage of in front of CBGs. It's just like, you listen to a song like that, you think of Joey Ramone, you think of New York garage rock, then you got a song like Goddamn New York, and then it's a quick album. It comes in at 30 minutes. I think you're on probably 8 out of 10 tracks or whatever, but it's just a really, really good, solid rock and roll album, man. It's one you gotta love.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I have a little favoritism towards it, but I'm a music fan, and I've made records that I'm not such a fan of, but that's one of those records you hit play, and Goddamn New York and Let's Get the Band Back Together. Those 2 songs were recorded before I was in the band, and that's when when they noticed that he was having his issues. So, the legacy of Scott Kempner is a part of those. But Goddamn New York, really, Andy, doesn't hold any punches back. He tells it like it is. He's a straight shooter. And I think that's how I think it captures, his memories of old New York and what's going on now. And let's get the band back together is an honest statement, except I don't wear a wig. And I'll tell you, Andy's really good at this because I was at a lobby in Los Angeles and I had my hair looked like Carrot Top, right? And there was a big bunch of people in the lobby. And I walked down there and I was running late. And Andy's classic at embarrassing people. And he's like, Keith, I love the new wig. But he said it's so loud that everybody turned around and was laughing. But a lot of, me and Albert Bouchard, we wrote Really Good, which is more like an Iggy Pop, Lust for Life kind of song. It's kind of like the oddball track on there. All About You was a song that I was working on, and me and Andy got together and finished it. Andy, classic, Sacred Cow. Albert, trying to look at the record now to see where there's a copy floating around somewhere. I just got an advance of it. But yeah, I mean, we redid the Blue Oyster Cult song, Transmaniacon, from their first record. Okay. So it's a really cool record. It's got a lot of history.
Well, on that song, Transmaniacon, I swear I closed my eyes and I said, my God, you sound like Dave Weindorf from Monster Magnet on that song. That was the first thing I thought of. And how similar your vocals are.
Dave is a really good friend of mine. I love Monster Magnet, and a lot of people have said that you sound like Weindorf. Maybe my fandom, maybe he's a guy I've known since I was 16 years old when he was in Shrapnel. And but I mean, and Dave is a huge Blue Oyster Cult fan, but Albert's like, that was initially on Albert's solo record, Imaginos, where he did it, and we tracked it, and then we kind of, tweaked it a bit for the Dictators record because there's such a history between the Dictators and Blue Oyster Cult with Sandy Perlman and Murray Krugman, and we felt that it had a good home on the new record. So thank you, because I love Dave, and I think Dave's a great singer.
And on the other two songs you mentioned, Sacred Cow and All About You, there was lyrics in both of those songs I had a comment on. Number one, on Sacred Cow, the line, "Don't let the bastards get you down." And this personal story to me is my father's 87 years old. He's a retired school teacher. And his first gift he got from a principal was a big wall plaque that he hung on his door, back in the late 50s. And it said in Latin, "Illegitimi non carborundum," which basically in English says, "Don't let the bastards get you down." And he gave that to me for my first job out of college in the mid-90s and said, "You hang that in your wall," and it's still up here, right up here in the shelf to this day. It's my good luck charm.
I love that. I mean, how that came about in the song is from Chris Christopherson. Remember when Sinead O'Connor was getting all that shit? And the late great Chris Christopherson said to Sinead O'Connor, "Don't let the bastards get you down." So that's how that came about. But I like your dad's story too. That's pretty damn cool.
It is. It's an old piece of wood, 50 years old. It's solid, and it'll be with me to my end days. But the last song, a lyric, I gotta just ask you, Keith. All About You. There's a line in there that says, "Making love to the Grateful Dead." What's that one all about?
All right. Well, that was Andy's line. I wrote me and Andy wrote the lyrics to that, and we went back and forth about that. And I was like, the whole ayahuasca thing, watching rainbows from our bed, ayahuasca going, making love to the Grateful Dead. I mean, I had, this went on, but that was Andy's line. You got to envision what the song's about. It's two really twisted people that found each other. And like it's the guy's love for the woman is more important. Like Jesus came into town, but it was like didn't matter. Really? It was all about all about you. It's two twisted people that connected, and they're delusional, and we take you through a 3-minute snapshot into their crazy life. But the Grateful Dead. Why? Are you a fan of the Grateful Dead?
Casual.
Me too.
Saw Jerry a couple times. Saw him a couple times, but casual.
I'm a casual. I mean, listen, I love American Beauty. I think the first, and working with David Joe, I played in David Johansen's band, and the biggest tweak ever as a musician is he wanted to open up with the Golden Road of Unlimited Devotion at a show we played in Philadelphia, and off the cuff we had to learn it because he loves that first Grateful Dead record. But I'm a Casual Dead fan, and I think all of the Dictators, believe it or not, are Casual Dead fans. So you'd have to ask Andy about the making love to the Grateful Dead part.
A couple quick facts. His father's fantastic, great guy, and always love for Papa Franco. I personally saw the dad a couple times at some of those rich stadium, some of those outside parties. Any plans to tour the Dictators for the album?
Yeah, real quick though, I went to go see the Dead twice. I mean, my brothers took me to go see Zeppelin, and I saw the Dead in '78. I was another year, but when I was of age, and we went to go see the Dead at the Garden. I'll be honest with you guys, we went there to cop drugs because we got free tickets. Yeah. Somebody owed me money, and they're like, "Oh, can I give you 2 Dead tickets?" So we went, and we it was right around when Priest played there with Iron Maiden, and a couple days before it. But we went there, and when we walked in, the lights were on. And the band was on stage. And I'm like, this is so weird. And nobody really even cares. They're like, talking to one another. And then all of a sudden the lights dimmed down and they went into playing in the band. And when I mean cop drugs, I mean, maybe, some reefer or whatever the case may be. But, and then now, what was the other question after that? I'm sorry.
Are the Dictators touring? Oh,
yeah. I mean, there's a lot of stuff coming up next year. I think we hope to announce something next week. We missed playing. We did a lot of touring in 23. We were out this summer with the Dam, which was great again, but we've been back since July. So I think it looks like from March throughout the summer, we're going to be pretty busy doing that.
Plug your socials.
I mean, I'm an anti-social social media guy, but I'm on Facebook. I post stuff on Facebook. I mean, everybody's on me. The Dictators are always posting, sharing videos, and Main Man Records. They post stuff. So, hang out with me in Ozzy's Boneyard, Hair Nation, the Johansson Show. Come see the Dictators, check out the record. And, I'm old school when it comes to that stuff.
That's awesome. Well, you have a rehearsal to get to. So, listeners, just want to remind you, get up to our website, metalmayhemroc.com. Check out the new merch page. Just got the new Halloween merch, Metal Mayhem shirts. They're up there at our Etsy page. And subscribe and leave reviews. Keith Roth, we could go on all night. You got stuff to do. Yankees are up.
That's it.
1-0. Guys on first and second, 2 outs. So looks like things are good in the Bronx.
I just want to say it was really great hanging out with John and Walt. I mean, you guys are awesome. I love what you do. And maybe I'll see you guys at the Alex Van Halen thing on Monday. And, keep it on, man. Metal Mayhem. You guys are doing a great. And my Pantheon brothers, right?
That's right. So we'll see you at the summer picnic.
I have to talk to Don Jamieson about bringing you guys on for an exclusive, your music guys. So we're going to have to talk nothing but sports.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Tell DJ we say hello and get to your rehearsal. Thanks, Keith.
Let's go Yanks. Nice meeting you guys.
You too. Cheers, man.
Take care, my dudes. Thank you.
Metal for life.
Thank you for listening to Metal Mayhem ROC. Check out our website at metalmayhemroc.com for information on podcasts, archives, links to all our live radio shows, and all sorts of info. Please like, follow, and share with everyone, even your non-metal friends. And always remember to keep it heavy.